Good evening or afternoon or morning, depending on when you're viewing this. For those of you in the Alumni Association, this is our YouTube presentation with the Academy Oath Project with Marybeth Ulrich and Cadet Second Class Yuan. And he and she are going to talk about themselves for a few moments so you get an understanding who they are. And then we're going to, Daryl and I are going to jump into asking some questions so that we can have a clear understanding of what the Oath Project's doing. And a paid bit of advertisement. For those of you who are really interested in this project, we'll give you the ability to contact both of them. And in addition to that, support them in any other way, financial or otherwise, that might be necessary. So with that, Marybeth, I'll turn to you. If you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and things that you've done and how you came to get to contact with this project, I would appreciate it.
Sure. So I'm Marybeth Ulrich, and I'm a member of the class of 1984. I was a political science major, though I really loved my history classes. And I came through at a time when there actually were a lot of core history classes, like more so than now. And anyway, so my path was, you know, I, um, I eventually came back to the academy in the 90s on faculty. It so happens that my specialty, um, I developed a specialty in civil military relations, even though I'm an international relations political scientist. But so I think a little bit of how I came to this. Um, so when I taught in active duty, and then I got out with 15 years active duty, and I took a job at the Army War College. So I was a civilian faculty member there. So I ended up teaching there 24 years. I just recently moved to the Naval War College over the summer to take a department chair job, which apparently is the department that Larry sort of works for, strategy and policy.
Yep.
But going back to when I first left active duty and went to the Army War College, and I realized, here I was, a major on terminal leave, and I'm teaching, lieutenant colonels and colonels. I'm like, oh, they're all smarter than majors, right? And and what I noticed right off the bat, this was 1999. So this was during the Clinton administration when, if you may recall, there wasn't great civil military relations. And the prevailing attitude was, well, what do they know, those civilians? Um, we should get our way, military saying that because that's just kind of the way they thought about things. And so that was a little bit shocking to me. And I says, well, that doesn't seem right to me. That doesn't seem like that really fits with the Constitution. So at that point, I had been writing on civil mil comparatively. Specifically, I was working on the post-communist transitions and how those militaries were making the transitions. But at that point, I shifted to more about democratic norms and what are the civ mil democratic norms, thinking and started writing on that because I felt like my students didn't have anything to go on with that. So I've always so I was very interested in this, and then in 2020 I took the opportunity to go back to the academy as a visiting professor. So I was the DBP, the Distinguished Visiting Professor in Political Science, for 2 years. And so when I came back, and I had stayed in touch with this department really the whole time. And so when I came back, like, oh, you do CivMil, that class that I had started like 30 years ago in 1993, like, we still have that thing. It's comparative CivMil. Why don't you take it? I'm like, okay. So that class started. I mean, the first day of that class, coincidentally, was January 7th, 2021. So it was a spring elective. And so, of course, the day before was the big event. And so basically what happened was we're just processing all of these events. The class had 13 cadets, 9 firsties, 4 2 degrees. Coincidentally, the beginning of the class, we're talking about the profession and a lot of this sort of civ-mil theory foundations. And we're processing the news. And so the cadets were asking, or it would occur to them, a lot of this behavior that they had witnessed on January 6th. And at that time, there was a lot of publicity about the military, about the veterans, and all that, and their participation. There was a particular Academy graduate who was getting a lot of attention. I think it was Larry Brock, right, from
Class
'89,
of '89, yeah.
who sadly was a political science major, of all things. And so, wow. And so again, this was a little bit gradual over the first few lessons, but so it dawned on the cadets. They actually said in class one day, we've taken the oath of office. We've taken it several times by now, but no one really ever explained it to us. And I said, that's interesting. But you're right. I'd graduated about almost, or duly like about 40 years prior. And I remembered back and like, I don't really remember getting so much on it either. It's just somehow we were supposed to get it, just by, drinking the water or hanging around or whatever. So I threw it back at them and said, so what are you going to do about it? Because you're going to graduate here, just months away. And so I was thinking commissioning ceremonies. If it's like the way mine was, I think the squadrons, we pretty much sort of designed them, definitely had our own ceremonies. And so I just threw it back at them. Again, 9 firsties. We had like a couple of squadron commanders in there. So I thought, oh, you guys can really take control of this. So they looked into it and they came back a little disappointed at first, because they came back and said, well, we looked into it, and Harmon Hall, the superintendent's office, controls these ceremonies. In fact, there was a common script. So they were a little disappointed. I said, well, let's see if we can get in that script. And so we crafted some language. I still remember cadet second class Isaac Van Wert at the time, who's now like a first lieutenant. So this is all class of 21 cadets. Came to my office one day. We said, we're going to write this thing, just a paragraph. Pulled out the Constitution, pulled out, what's the language of the oath. We came up with the paragraph, which we can provide for you if you'd like. But it's something like, and it's put. So long story short, we got it in all the scripts, and so it affected the 40 ceremonies. And so we'll get more into the project, I think, as we go on with Larry's questions, but that is how it started. And just to say that a lot more has happened since then. The only other thing I'll kind of throw out there in the beginning is that it's been a mutual. I mean, the beauty of the Oath Project is that it's grassroots. It came from the cadets, but we fed off each other. And so these were cadets who wanted to know more, and by pairing them with faculty who are a little bit more expert and guiding them along, but enabling them to be the peers to get this message out to each other. That's what's really unique about it. I'd also like to give a shout out to history, because they are one of our sort of supporting departments, and they've always been with us. They're on our team. We have a little Microsoft team thing, where we communicate. And we've been doing Constitution Day now for 3 years, where we put together the program, and where the cadets now are putting together, but we enlist at least several history faculty who are very willing to help out and provide that expertise. And they're one of the only departments that we've visited so far to talk about how they can help with their core curriculum to emphasize some of these themes a little bit more. So they've talked about how in the American history class, if not for this effort, they maybe wouldn't have highlighted so much history of the oath and how it kind of fits in with their curriculum. So I'll leave it at that for now, and then we can explore this more later.
Thank you, Marybeth. That ties in nicely with one of the topics we had during our reunion in September there in Fairchild Hall, where this very topic was hotly discussed and so forth. All right, Weiss, it is your turn. I understand you're in Tiger 10. As I said before, we shared a hallway with you in 21 many years ago, in time before dinosaurs. There weren't even pterodactyls yet. So with that, I'll turn it over to you to give us some background on yourself and on the project itself.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Cadet Second Class Weiss Yuan. I'm a junior at the Air Force Academy, class of 2025. And I had the privilege of serving as the fall 2023 cadet in charge of the Academy Oath Project, and I still stay on leadership. And we have a other cadet in charge right now, cadet second class Micah Stark. And so as Dr. Ulrich talked about how she kind of founded the Academy Oath Project, I kind of want to talk about kind of what got me interested in the oath of office. And this all kind of started in high school. My senior year of high school, our state Supreme Court, and I came from Connecticut, so Connecticut State Supreme Court had a essay competition about the rule of law. And one of the things I looked at with the rule of law was actually about the oath of office, because looking at the rule of law, one of the things I discovered was that the oath of office isn't just a ceremony, but because of the fact that the oath is the same among every single officer that takes it. It's the same oath that a basic cadet takes. It's the same oath that a second lieutenant takes, as a general, as senators, as the vice president, and even the president takes the oath to support and defend the Constitution. And I think in doing so, it makes a point that the rule of law is superior to the rule of any individual. And that was kind of my topic for this essay competition I went for in high school. And ever since I came to the academy, the oath of office has always been an interest of mine, because it is not just a ceremony, but it is something much greater than a ceremony. It is something where we are promoting democracy and promoting the rule of law. And as a result of that, I joined the Academy Oath Project my freshman year, and I've been with it ever since, and had the privilege of serving as the cadet in charge last semester, and still stay on to lead some efforts now.
Okay, I think that's a good summary. I like it. You've kind of given a background of what led to both of your interest in the project itself. So let me ask you this question. How was the decision to do this and start pushing it initially received, Marybeth, and how's it being received now, Weiss? I guess that would be the question to ask you. And you can go in order, whichever one wants to go first. So
I'll start with the beginning.
okay.
So an observation of how things kind of turned out in that first phase is that I noticed after a while, basically everything we were asking for, we were getting. It's just that people weren't asking for it before. So for example, we said, well, we're not really paying, these rituals are just going through the motions. What can we do to make them more meaningful by inserting the language? So we got that. We didn't fight that hard for anything. It's just the next thing the cadets noticed was there's no coverage of this in basic cadet training. And so that very first semester, when we were just kind of pulling things together, before we knew it, by May, I'd say by March, we were briefing the colonel who was going to be the BCT commander with some ideas they had. And he's like, yeah, go for it. And so then they threw it back at us, and we had to actually design that training and deliver it in BCT. So we've been doing that for 3 years now. We took over Constitution Day, which was something that departments sort of had to do, but weren't that interested in doing. So apparently, there was this federal mandate that these federal institutions are supposed to have a Constitution Day program. So what was happening was it was rotating between political science, history, and law. The year of, so it'd be the next fall so the fall after the spring, because Constitution Day is always in September, so it's September 17th, commemorate 1787, right?
Yep,
and so there was, faculty member in charge at poli sci say, hey, why don't you open? She's like, why don't you get your AOP cadets to do this? We're like, sure, and so we want to do it, and so now we do it every year, so you're putting some energy into that. So there's lots more that has happened. Maybe this is kind of sort of where Weiss came in. So we were kind of been doing things for a while, and I would just to transition to Weiss. One of the things we decided about a year and a half in was to go for club status. And it was a bit of a debate. I mean, all the cadets were necessarily for it. There's pros and cons of being a club, but the way it's evolved is the club is part of the overall project. I wouldn't say the club is the only thing about the project, and I can get into that more, but it turns out it's an important part, and maybe Weiss can speak to that.
Definitely. And so the Academy Oath project right now, kind of our main goal is to integrate oath education within existing cadet wing education programs. As Dr. Ulrich said, Constitution Day was existing program, and Academy Oath project kind of took the effort and took the lead on that to integrate oath education within opportunities like that. Similar with basic cadet training. And in addition to that, we've also integrated oath education within the dean's core curriculum through the core political science class, as well as through existing cadet wing. They're called CE lessons, continuing education lessons, where we've integrated more and more oath education within those programs. Furthermore, at major dinners such as commitment dinner or recognition dinner, we kind of tie the theme of the dinner back into the oath of office. How every time we take an oath, we're taking commitment to something bigger than ourselves, and each of these milestones is also a commitment towards a cause bigger than ourselves. And so I think as far as the how cadets have received this, as you asked earlier, I think it's been mostly positive for the most part. When I talk to other cadets about how they think of some of the oath education training, a lot of times the reaction is, I didn't really know some of what you taught us. For example, one of the things we talk about is the difference between the enlisted oath of office and the officer oath of office. And a lot of feedback I've gotten is that cadets prior to the education from Academy Oath Project is that they never knew the differences between the enlisted oath and the officer's oath. Furthermore, I talked to a couple of freshmen after they received our summer BCT training this past summer, and a couple of their impressions were that they were surprised at how significant the oath of office was. They weren't aware of the lasting obligations of the oath of office. And one of the things the Academy Oath Project tries to emphasize is that your oath is a lifelong commitment. It's not just a commitment you take while you're in uniform, but it's a lifelong commitment. And some of the cadets, during basic cadet training were not aware of that. And I think overall, cadets have learned a lot from what the Academy Oath Project has kind of imbued among the cadets when this information hasn't necessarily been presented through other channels. So this is something new that cadets are getting that we think is critical, especially at this time in their nation.
Just to tag on something that Weiss said, one of the things that even that first group of cadets got approval for was we made a handout. It's called we call it the appointee handout. Well, it's the oath. There's a handout on the oath. It's a one-page handout. It's got our 4 pillars in it, and we got this into the appointee packet that they mail out to them in advance. So they come in, and then we built our education around those pillars. So it was, help me, Weiss, if I get this, first one was the long, sort of like the history of the oath. This goes back to the Continental Army, 1775. I think the second one, this is to, it's to a document, right? To the Constitution, not to a person and all that. Third one is well, that's the fourth one, but the third one are the norms. That there are 2 key professional norms. The one is civilian control, and the second one is nonpartisanship. And then that you remember the profession for life, and what that means. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks that don't understand that taking the oath stays with you through your entire life. That's shown up on several occasions here. So for cadets not to have known that, it is not necessarily surprising, because there's some other folks that need the education too. So it sounds like you had a lot of initial support right out of the bat, that there was nobody out there that was asking the question of why the heck are we doing this, or the cadet wing already knows all of this stuff and so forth. Were there any obstacles out there that you did run into that you had to overcome, or any problems that have emerged since?
I think the biggest obstacle is always how do we meet cadets where they are? just
Mhm.
given the fact that cadets have such a busy schedule. They're not willing to, if cadets, had the choice between going skiing over weekend or reading a book about the oath of office, I'm sure they would rather go skiing that weekend. And so our biggest, thing when we look at this is how do we fit oath education within, opportunities that they're already getting. And then that was something that, we kind of talked about earlier, which is we kind of looked at this as an issue of how do we fit oath education into existing cadet wing opportunities as to not create additional, mandatory events or readings that cadets have to do, kind of meet them where they are. And a big thing of looking at this is approaching it by seeing what is already out there with oath education, what classes kind of cover civil relations, cover the oath of office, etc. And how do we improve those lessons? Currently, we're looking at the Dean's curriculum, the core poli-sci course. Previously, that didn't really cover the oath of office as in depth as the Academy Oath Project and the Department of Political Science kind of would like it to. And one of the efforts right now is improving that lesson to have a more in-depth lesson about civil relations and the oath of office. Furthermore, is also looking at these oath of office lessons taught by permanent party, these within throughout BCT and by AOCs and permanent party. How do we improve those lessons to better match what is out there on civil relations and the oath of office?
And I would add on that course. So we go out of our way to involve the cadets in this, because I could sit and talk to the faculty and we could design a lesson and, maybe without that much effort, some effort, but we're putting an enormous amount of time into having the mentoring the cadets to come up with the components of this lesson. So just last week, I was on a Teams call with the team. So the thing about the Oath Project too, it's very organized. There's all these committees and they're doing all that are focusing on different things. So there is a committee that's working on the 211 project. And so on the call was me as a senior mentor with the course director. They were pitching their ideas, and we told them, "Oh, you need to tighten this up, need that, go back, whatever. They're going to work on it some more, and they're going to come back." So to me, that's the secret sauce. What's interesting is, I'd say the one sort of unexpected letdown in the project, and Weiss knows because he was there, was the West Point heard about us, and they actually invited me to come out and speak to the dean. Had some sort of kickoff symposium with his department heads, and he decided to focus that on stewarding the profession and all that. So I was just one of several speakers who was helping with that, but I was invited because they'd heard about the Oath Project. And then when I was out there, I was using the opportunity to try to get West Point interested, and had all these other outside meetings other than just what that commitment was. And based on that, was invited to come back basically, months later in January. So this was August, come back in January to speak to the firsties in this course they have called MX 400 officership that they all take. And so I said, okay, but I don't want to just bring me. I'm going to bring the AOP cadets, and we're going to do a panel. So that was great because we actually had to put together this briefing that the cadets played a part in. I think that there were like 2 or 3, and I was also there. But the disappointment was West Point's attitude was, we don't really, thanks for coming. It was all very interesting, but we don't need help with this. And they had no interest in the sort of grassroots cadet part, because they were just sort of smugly saying like, we're 100% have this, So on the one hand, I applaud them that they do have a kind of capstone officership course that USAF doesn't have, and it builds on the 4 kind of contributing core courses that could be a part of that. And it's like poli-sci, behavioral science, history, and I can't remember the other one, maybe
Law.
philosophy.
Wow.
Yeah. But they just weren't interested. So they were sort of missing what the beauty of having cadets actively doing this themselves and not just saying, well, you're giving it to me, I'm fine. So it's kind of like they don't know what they don't know. So what I try to focus on really the whole time is like, what is that next thing that we can, get the cadets involved in? What is it? Is it Constitution Day? Is it now there's some interest in this course?
Mhm.
Now that we're planning, we just heard actually that that Academy Assembly, which is the major political science conference every year, has decided to sort of make us their topic because they thought 2024 election year, and so this is new. This just happened in the last couple of weeks. So now the challenge will be how to make sure our AOP cadets are really central to putting that together.
Mhm.
And the idea was because we want to have a kind of our own symposium going forward as something separate from Academy Assembly, but to get us started, the idea of political science department is to use some of those resources. We got fairly small donation recently that we're going to put toward this to kind of get us off to a good start. But I want the cadets are going to learn how to do a conference by participating in this kind of long running conference. But I want to make sure that that the whole idea of us doing these what we're going to call these symposiums in the future is that these are tools for them to continue to develop. So by bringing in some experts to develop their expertise, but also to share what we're doing and to try to get this grassroots effort going other places. If it's other academies, if it's ROTC, I'd also say that Weiss was also on a trip in September. We took a small group out to Annapolis and we just spent a day with them. And that we talked, the chair of the political science department was pretty interested. But that's, again, if we have these events, we can continue to develop the networks and try to get, try to spread this.
It's good. You touched on one of the things I was going to ask you about, where you saw this going in the future. Weiss, tell me a little bit about what you think the cadet wing thinks about all of this. Are they beginning, because like anything else, I'm sure it hasn't changed over the length of the academy. There's always, as you pointed out, there's always better things to spend your time with, and there's always other things that you just kind of doze off in the background on. Are you being successful at raising their awareness and level of interest and so forth?
I think so. I think the Academy Oath Project has been successful in meeting and giving cadets the fundamental knowledge about what our oath is. And I think one of the most important things is I think as cadets we have to understand that our oath is just something bigger than us. It's bigger than just the military. It's to the Constitution. And I think talking with many cadets, I think they've really understood those fundamentals. They understand the fundamentals that the oath is to the Constitution. They understand that the oath of office is not just a ceremony. It's not just a one event. It's not a photo op. It's in fact more than that. It's a commitment to the Constitution. And I think cadets are able to now understand those fundamentals and apply those to some of the more modern day events that we see. I think a big part of this effort is looking at is trying to normalize some of these foundations that we see today. I think a large thing that's happened over the last couple of decades is that extremism has kind of arisen as a result of different, radical groups becoming more normalized throughout America. If you look at January 6th, I think a lot of people definitely thought some of what happened on January 6th was normal. I think that some of the polls showed that today. And I think a big part of the Academy Oath Project is looking at how do we bring the normalization, the norms back to what our commitment is, back to some of the professional norms that we sign on to when we take this oath, such as nonpartisanship, such as civil relations, some of those norms that are so critical to how our military and government function.
Right. So a lot of what we talk about is, what's the role of a military in democracy? And for someone who's taught, I mean, I've taught civil mil for like over 30 years, but honestly, every PME institution I've been at, it's been a fight because people think it's just civilian control, which is hard enough, but there's so much nuance to it that we don't get to. And so the Oath Project is trying to bring that in because it can touch on so many aspects. So, I've also observed that just the teaching of the profession is not very deep. It surprisingly slips through the cracks, even at the academy. So this is a topic to bring that in, because when I teach this, it all hinges on an understanding of the profession and how there's distinct roles and responsibilities and what does this mean in a democracy and all that. I'd also like to mention that we are one of the projects within the Oath Project is we have a group working on, we're calling it the Oath Handbook, which is basically going to be sort of like a textbook where the main sort of themes that we emphasize with each chapter that we're developing basically our own materials. And it will also highlight materials that we've already developed. Like, so for example, when the Associated Press article came out a few weeks ago that highlighted, sadly, West Point kind of got the lead,
I was going to ask you about that very question.
Which was surprising. We didn't even know they were going to be in it because apparently what happened was the Associated Press reporter had seen another one of our online op-eds and things that's out there, that if you go to our web page, we have several of those are highlighted, the web page on the Cadet Clubs page. And so he called the Air Force media relations, so the superintendent's media relations person, and he just wanted to know, like, so what's going on with this? And so we've been talking to him for months. And then toward the end, why since some of the cadets got involved and they tracked down some of the class of 21 cadets. And then I was surprised to see that all this thing at West Point. But if you read the article, there's no mention of what the cadets are doing at West Point. They just basically went to, like, could have been our poli-sci 211 class, whatever lesson they were doing that day. Yeah, we do that too. But it kind of missed the point. And then if you read down farther, then it talks about what we were doing, which is what the cadets are doing. And so the important thing about that is I think this is really essential for, my study of civil military relations, especially like in other countries that have coups and things like that. Those happen because the military and the citizens themselves are less attached to their democratic institutions. So the less you care about them, the less you want to preserve them, the more you don't care if these norms go by the wayside. So that's why we're so emphasizing, what the norms are. And by doing this activity, it hopefully develops this attachment, because they're doing it, they're experiencing it. And hopefully this is way more lasting than whatever that lesson was at West Point, hopefully they don't forget, some years from now.
Well, at the risk of sounding again like pterodactyls, I mean, there's three of us here that are old grads, and we remember all those classes that you went to on Saturday morning that you wished would just be over, okay? Because you just didn't pay any attention to them. You're just thinking, goodness, that it wasn't a triple threat that weekend or whatever. So I think it's an interesting point that you make, because I was going to ask you about the fact that I'd read the article and they were talking about West Point, and then your description behind the scenes led me to go, yep, the green guys pulled a coup again. Okay, maybe they conspired to do it, but they did. So, so what's next, Weiss? I mean, where do you want to take this project?
I think there's a lot of exciting stuff coming for the Academy Oath Project. I think now is a time where it's really growing. It's really taking off. I think there's a lot of interest at this critical point in time, given what's happening in our country on oath education and developing majors of character in that way. And I think going forward, the Academy Oath Project is really investing in a couple different, initiatives and projects. Dr. Ulrich mentioned our possible, our future symposium on democracy, ethos, and civil relations. That is one of our future ambitions. Another future ambition is to really allow cadets to immerse ourselves in our country's founding. There's trips at the Academy, they're called cultural immersion trips, where cadets over spring break or over the summer get to visit another country and immerse themselves in another country's history or culture. And I think the Academy Oath Project thinks it's just as important for our cadets to immerse ourselves in our own country's founding and our own country's history and some of our norms and history as well. And so we're looking at doing a trip with the support of donors to bring cadets to DC, to Philadelphia, to a lot of our historical landmarks over spring break as a trip to immerse our cadets in our country's history. A third ambition is to bring a physical landmark or statue or a physical landmark regarding the oath of
Like
office.
a monument.
Right. Monument, correct. And if you look at the other academies at West Point, right off of the Soup's home is a fence, and part of that fence is something called Constitution Corner. And Constitution Corner is right next to the cadet dorms. And Constitution Corner is a monument where they have the oath of office, they have the excerpts from the Constitution, and it's a place where cadets and faculty come to learn about the Constitution and the oath of office. Similarly, at the Naval Academy, as you enter Bancroft Hall, which is their dorm where they house all 4,000 midshipmen, on the side is a plaque of the oath of office. And similarly, at Coast Guard Academy, they have one too in their quarters. And part of what the Academy Oath Project is looking at doing is bringing a physical monument of the oath of office as a reminder for cadets to look at every time they pass by, of the greater significance of the oath that they are taking. And so this is really something that we're really looking at for a big future project to build on what is already here at USAF.
Wow.
Right. And for the trip Weiss mentioned, I mean, I would treat it as like a staff ride. You guys, where the students had to prepare parts of it. Like they wouldn't be there passively. Like, why are we going to this place? What are we going to learn here? What happened here? All that.
I think it's critical that you've that a critical difference and a critical thing that you've done to work to be cadet driven, because you don't get buy-in usually by forcing it from above. You get compliance.
Patches, by the way.
Yep.
So as far as exposure, they finally got the patches that they can wear on their A jackets and all that. So that's some good visibility.
That's excellent too. So if you had one last thing that you want to tell a bunch of, shall we say, elderly statesmen and stateswomen and so forth about this project, what would it be?
You want to go first, Weiss?
Yeah,
Or
sure.
you want to go last? It's your choice.
I'll go. So I think if there's one thing that we could pass on is that fact that I think we're at such a critical time in our country. When you look at what's going around around the world, geopolitical events, the divide that's happening with our own country, there's a lot of uncertainty about civil relations, about whether they could trust a nonpartisan military. I think the question is being raised about whether whether the president has influence over the military, whether the military can stay nonpartisan, given some of the recent events. We look at our former chairman, the chief of staff. He's kind of a case study as into what can happen and what the military should or should not do in certain scenarios when the military is being politicized. And I think we are at an important time in our country's history that we really have to look at what where this is going forward. And I think one of the things that there could not be a greater attention to is or some of the efforts that the Academy Oath Project is working on, such as some of these nonpartisan norms. What happens? What are some of these obligations that we are committed to once we join the profession of arms? What is our oath of office action 2? And I think these are some of the important topics that the Academy Oath Project is looking at today. And we really, with the support of community members, it really expand this project. And one of the other things is that when you look at what's happening today is, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of extremism has been normalized, and it is really important for us as members of the military, as members of the profession of arms, as well as community members, to come back to what is actually the true normal. What is what does our Constitution describe of the military's role? What are some of the professional norms that our military should be a part of? Not things such as January 6th or extremism that could be the effect of some of the extreme groups that are rising in today's world.
What I would add to Weiss is, as a political scientist, like I said, I write a lot about norms, and I love the definition of norms, which comes out of Ziblatt and Zabitsky's book, How Democracies Die, which I highly recommend. And it goes something like, norms are things that are widely shared, understood, and enforced. And so we have a problem across the board because these norms are not widely shared. I mean, not widely understood. And therefore they can't be enforced. And not just even within the profession, but ultimately we work for the American people. And if American people don't understand these norms, then that's a really lacking oversight of the profession. So I think there's just so much work to do. What keeps me going is at least I can say, hey, I'm doing something, to help this democracy. I don't, it's one thing, but I don't worry that I'm not doing something, and that and hopefully the cadets are getting that same feeling. And as they go forward, hopefully they can find ways to bring this forward. I also want to mention, which I started to, and then I lost my train of thought. When that AP story came out, we were contacted by a couple of Air Force units who just had read the article and tracked down our emails through Air Force Global or whatever. And right now there's a group of cadets working with an intel unit at Wright Pat for their next officer professional development thing that that's coming up. We've shared our materials, and we're trying to tailor a future session for this group. So and we have an outreach committee for that, so I'm saying so like the sky's the limit. That's the kind of thing we want to do. And so hopefully even when the cadets get out there as officers, they can find ways to contribute and reach back to us. And my vision is for the Air Force Academy to remain the sort of epicenter of this, to be the energy for it, and to keep it going.
Daryl, you have any comments or observations that you'd like to add before I wrap this up?
Well, I tell you, I think we're asking a lot of our cadets here because, listening to Weiss talk, and we've had the opportunity privately too to have these kind of conversations. But one thing I think that we must remember is that they're young, they're inexperienced, they're approaching all of this with a lot of naivete. Whereas those of us who have lived this for 30, 40, 50 years, we have experienced this in the raw. Those of us who worked on the air staff, the joint staff, and we had to interact constantly with our political leaders, right down to the writing of laws and structuring of laws. It's hard to separate the politics from all of that. But I think it's certainly a very exciting project, and I'm certainly supportive of it. One thing I would suggest, a potential audience for you, we have reunions, we have class reunions here all the time, and they're always asking for briefings from the Academy on the honor code, on what are the cadets doing and what's the latest issues, where are we on DEI, whatever's going on out there, they want to know. And I would suggest that it might be worthwhile for this organization to have a stock presentation that they could give to our bodies of grads when they come through for the reunion. I think they would really appreciate and enjoy this.
Great idea. And we actually do have a presentation, right?
Yeah, we do. Yep.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we need to figure out how to make the connection between your availability and the desires of the various reunion groups. And I just happen to know the right people to talk to about that. So
Well,
I
to
will
make
do
it
And
that.
my 40th is in the fall, so I'd love
What
to
now? What?
get that captive audience there.
Your
My
Which one is
40th
that?
reunion.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm saying. See, and the groups will be here. They're going to want to know again what's going on at the academy. What are the issues? And I think something like this would be a very excellent presentation to make available to them.
Yeah, no, we would
You'll
appreciate
certainly
any
get a lot
help
of
on that.
feedback from them on their lifetime experiences
Right.
living with this.
Well, I'll tell you, we have one group of an active group that I'm not going to name, but you probably might know who I'm talking about, who actually put in a freedom of information request on because they were suspicious in what we were doing. And so it actually got a lot of, because we had to answer all that, and the political science part, and everybody else had to, but that's the beauty of the project. If you have a problem with us talking about the Constitution, then
You may be
that's
living in the
the
wrong
beauty of the
country.
oath. It's safe. It's a
Yeah.
good thing to anchor this on. It's a nonpartisan tool. It's an underutilized tool.
And in
you know,
fact,
and so we're just trying to use it.
adding to that, I think, when people try to ask what the Academy Oath Project is doing, or groups are doing FOIA requests, I think we encourage these groups to look at the Academy Oath Project and what we're doing, because I think the stuff we're presenting could not be at a more important time. And we stand by the oath education and the curriculum and the development of cadets and future officers and in the way that we're doing it. And then we encourage anybody to take a look at some of our materials or the slides or any of that stuff that we're educating cadets on.
Yeah.
Right. And we never heard from that
No.
group again.
You answered their questions
and-
satisfactorily then.
Right. And just to emphasize what we have that oversight on what the cadets are doing. So we have that energy, but we're making sure there's not something that gets out there that, can get us in trouble.
Sure. Well, and we live in interesting times. So I will make a couple comments in closing here. When Caesar led the 10th Legion across the Rubicon to Rome, he was welcomed by the Roman populace. They were celebrating the end of the Roman Republic, okay, because he had violated one of their most sacred norms of taking a legion across the Rubicon. Ending 400 years of republic and establishing another 400 years of an empire with Caesar, with a whole lot of bad history as a result of that. That is a warning to all of us. There's others. We could talk about Oliver Cromwell in England and so forth. All of these things tell us that democracy is something that has to be nourished, and it has to be grown and protected, and not assumed just as part of your birthright that doesn't need to be taken care of. The second thing is this is part of the spring edition of the Falcon Footnote, which is dedicated to the Masters of the Air series. This article will be in that edition, and along with the hook or connection to this presentation, and you can work backwards to get to the footnote as well. I want to thank both of you, Marybeth and Weiss, for joining us tonight. I will tell you that there'll be more questions. I told you at the beginning, I'll say this again. I'm going to make sure that both of your contact data is available so that people can get a hold of you if they want to. And in turn, I'm going to also send both of you a link to the Air Force Academy Department of History Alumni Association with the invitation to join us. Okay. You do not have to be a historian. In fact, we take a very wide interest. What we really are interested in are people that want to advance these kind of causes at the Academy. So with that, good night, good morning, goodbye to all those who are watching at this particular time. And this is the first in what will be a series of these. Both of you, I suspect, will be back for another opportunity to talk about this very project. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.